first team presentation for Division D of the preliminary round for the 2017 Champions Trophy Case Competition. The team presenting now is Team Pronamu, and we are very lucky to have our judging panel today, consisting of Jodie King from CPO in New Zealand, Stephanie Perrin, Global Fund Analyst from Milford Asset Management, and also Hamish Nuttall from Digile.io, Virtual Chief Digital Officer. The team will have 10 minutes to make their presentation, followed immediately by 10 minutes of Q&A. When you have 2 minutes remaining in your presentation, I will hold up this sign, which the judges and contestants will be able to see, and when you have 1 minute left, it will be this sign. This will also happen during Q&A, so 2 minutes and 1 minute, and then I would have to cut you off. So Team Pronamu, you may begin when you're ready.
So flying can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people, but what does it really mean to you? You as New Zealanders might be used to the great service and the Kiwi experience on the plane, but the competitive pressure is rising and needs a direct response, and that is what we as Pronamu Consulting want to tackle today. Therefore, I would like to introduce my colleagues Jan Werner, Valentin Beguin, Anna Walter, and myself, Gesa Holz. So, during our analysis, we have come across two major trends in the industry. First of all, the emerging middle class, which is, has an rising purchasing power, especially in the markets of India and China, and also rising customer expectations. The second trend that we came across is the intensified competition, which is mainly due to the low fuel prices and can also be found among the premium rivals that are flying the long distance routes. And while these trends can definitely be leveraged on as opportunities, and that is what my colleague Anna Walter will show you how this applies to your company.
So the increasing competition of premium rivals in the long-haul flights needs a response, and this will be done by partnering with Etihad and offering long-haul flights from Abu Dhabi to the Trans-Tasmanian area. And this will increase customers to 92,000 by 2017. Of course, the emerging markets is a huge growth opportunity. So we say leverage it, partner up with Air China, leverage the existing relationship with Air China by increasing the brand reputation there, as well as offering more code-sharing flights. And this will increase the customers to 26,000 by 2017 in this area. So overall, the initiatives we propose will lead to almost 80% of seats added to New Zealand as market share. Now, when we look at the current situation of Air New Zealand, we see that it revolves all around offering a premium experience to air passengers. And this is done by superior customer service and enhanced by the marketing, so it leads to a great brand reputation. And this drives revenue. Of course, more customers would also drive revenue. So what we see is that great partnership management skills could be leveraged by extending the current strategic alliances and keeping operational costs low. Now, we've come across 4 different customer segments during our analysis. One is Max. Max is a low-budget traveler, but he might not be the perfect target for you, since targeting him would basically dilute the brand equity. But then there's people like Justin. He belongs to a growing customer segment of emerging middle-class people in Asia, and he loves the excitement of traveling as well as the premium service, so he should definitely be a target customer. Targeting him would also satisfy Christina from, say, Germany, and Christina really loves the comfort and reliability of Air New Zealand. Other competitors have also already identified that trend. So there are, of course, Trans-Tasmanian people, such as a couple. So those cannot be short-term targets because they would already like the service you have. They would already love the efficiency and could only be targeted in the long run. So the focus here really is on people like Justin and Christina. So what to take away from this analysis? 3 things. First of all, target the emerging middle class as a growth opportunity. Do so by leveraging the partnerships and the strategic alliances, but do never not give up the customer service, the superior customer service you would offer. And my colleague Gesa Holz is happy now to guide you through the details how we plan to do this.
So the strategy basically consists of forming a partnership to Etihad, as well as strengthening the partnership to Air China. In this case, Air New Zealand would fly the routes from the hub in Abu Dhabi towards Auckland, as well as flying the distances from Beijing and Shanghai towards Auckland. So let me dig deeper into the partnership to Etihad. This partnership basically is similar to the partnership that currently Emirates has to Malaysia Airlines. And in this case, Etihad would fly the distances from India towards Abu Dhabi, as well as from Europe to Abu Dhabi. And from there on, Air New Zealand would take over and fly the long-distance flight towards Auckland. This would strengthen the connection towards India and Europe, and also be a direct response to the competitive pressure, for example, from Emirates, but still keeping the premium experience. And of course, there are also strong incentives for Etihad, and we would gladly like to elaborate on those in the Q&A. I would now like to hand over to Valentine with the second part.
Our second targeted market is China, due to the fact that the Chinese tourism within New Zealand is expected to grow by 28%. So we recommend you to leverage on your current partnership with Air China by renegotiating code-share flights, but also by proposing new routes to secondary airports such as Shenzhen. We also, to increase the awareness of your great service within China, it is essential to strengthen the brand image there. It is therefore why we recommend to create pop-up events in major cities to show the Kiwi and Hobbit experience. I'm happy to elaborate on that later. So how can this strategy help satisfy your targeted customer? First of all, Christina will be able to enjoy quicker boarding, but also the quiet plane and sky coach to the smaller size of the airplanes from Abu Dhabi to Auckland. Secondly, Justin could also enjoy the Kiwi experience and your great service thanks to the share code of flights with Air China. So let's take one step back and look at what you have to do on the morning. First of all, call the Etihad CEO, Mr. Hogan. Secondly, renegotiate more codeshare with Air China and propose new routes to secondary airports. Noyan will show you the financial impact of your efforts.
Exactly. Already in the past years, you have seen an increase of seats carried to New Zealand, 9%, and also 14% predicted this year. What is interesting here is that 35% of this increase will be catered by Emirates or by other Asian long-haul carriers. By the strategy that we have just proposed, by the utilization of 787 aircrafts that are scheduled to be delivered in 2017, 5% of those 35%, so 5 out of 35 can be shifted towards Air New Zealand, and thereby the passengers carried can be increased by a further 118,000. But also in the long term, the proposed strategy has a few potentials. Etihad has a strong presence in Australia already, and by utilizing on that, the trans-Tasman routes can be strengthened, and the presence there can be strengthened and elaborated. Furthermore, as said, routes to secondary airports in China can be offered, as well as that the international travelers bring a high potential to utilize on the high-yield domestic market of New Zealand, of New Zealand. And finally, when the growth payoffs, then it should be considered to purchase even more orders of the Boeing 787, or at least options of orders. So we, as Punamu, were pleased to propose a partnership with Etihad to encounter the competitive pressures in the premium market by offering flights to Abu Dhabi, and afterwards Etihad is carrying on codeshare flights to other markets, and that can increase the passengers by 93,000, and also to leverage on the partnership with Air China by offering more domestic codeshare flights in China to get more people onto the plane, onto the new route that was already established by Air New Zealand, and that can increase the carried passengers by 26%, by 26,000. And overall, the proposed strategy strengthens your competitive profile and increases the the share of Air New Zealand in the added seats to nearly 18%. And with that, I'd like to thank you, and now we're more than happy to take any questions.
Okay, I'm happy to kick off. Did you consider going it alone? So both of your proposals are either increased code share or partner with Etihad, which would be a very new type of partnership for us. So did you consider going it alone?
Well, what we did consider was what we did consider is looking into the low-cost carrier, and that would be alone, of course. And we did also think about doing it alone. However, the problem is that it does not really pay off, since that would, as said in the case, require a lot of investment into infrastructure which is already provided from Etihad. So that's why we suggest to partner with Etihad and rather not to do it alone.
It seems to me you focused on the customer experience and that Air New Zealand provides. You haven't, apart from mentioning that low cost thing, you haven't really talked about cost. What do you think the implications are on profitability of just focusing on customer experience with the competitive market we have?
If I may take that question. So the question is how the proposed strategy impacts the cost side of...
Well, how have you addressed cost, and therefore profitability?
We've addressed cost by seeing the threat, of course, of the increase. We expect an increase in the fuel prices, which makes up 37% of the operating costs. Furthermore, more costs that were addressed by us were especially the marketing costs when going into China, when strengthening the brand experience. Because right now, Air New Zealand already has a strong brand, a very recognizable brand, but in China, probably not as well known, and therefore we want to launch a marketing campaign there, but also via WeChat and Weibo, which are rather cheaper marketing channels in China. So rather try to keep the costs in sight, but of course this strategy is of course connected to a few costs and to the profitability. But in total, we expect that the profit margin is decreasing, but by carrying this more demand and carrying the more passengers into New Zealand, we still think that the net number is still increasing.
Can you talk a little bit about whether you think there may be challenges in terms of cultural differences going into sort of the partnership with Etihad and Air China?
So, for example, due to cultural differences, we will propose to counter the language barrier, to have bilingual flight attendant, so that Chinese people could also feel well served during the flight. But also when we want to create the marketing campaign, we have also to focus on the different channels that they use in China, such as WeChat and Weibo. But also know that the middle class is increasing in China. They also want to discover different culture, and this is what we want to offer in Air New Zealand. So through the good service and the Kiwi and the Orbit experience within the flight, this should be what will attract them to fly with our airline.
If I may take the second part of the question regarding Etihad, we don't try to target the market in the United Arab Emirates, but use it as a stopover, because Etihad is currently seeking out for new partners, as the current partnership is probably not as flourishing as well. I think they're even meeting today with Lufthansa to announce a new partnership. So there we really just keep it operational and try to focus on the market in Europe and India, but not on the United Arab Emirates.
So You say, why would Etihad collaborate with Air New Zealand? So you're seeing greater consolidation in the aviation marketplace, but if you think of Lufthansa and Etihad, they are big players. Air New Zealand, in terms of the airlines around the world, is very small. So why would they want to partner with Air New Zealand?
What we've seen in the past years is that Emirates, as like you have the three big Gulf carriers, Emirates, Qatar, and Etihad, and Emirates massively increased their capacity to New Zealand, and also Qatar is launching the first non-stop flight from Qatar to New Zealand, and we thought that it's a great incentive for Etihad to also go with their competitors and offer a flight, or at least offer the connection to New Zealand by a partnership. Furthermore, the airline is moving towards the Star Alliance partners, as the current partnership is not working as well. And there we see Air New Zealand as a great partner to serve the Pacific market for Etihad.
Air New Zealand is obviously competing with other airlines, but it's also competing with other destinations. People don't have to come here on holiday. How do you propose to address that?
If I may take this question. So we want to target the middle class new travelers. So for example in China, and we want to really market them what will be the experience also in New Zealand, not just by marketing the airline, but also marketing the country as a whole. So by showing what will be the Kiwi experience there, but also by showing the Hobbit and the Lord of the Ring experience that they can have in New Zealand.
So from a practical side, think about a viral campaign, just putting pop-up containers in different cities, maybe 1 week in Beijing, 1 week to Shenzhen, and then having the large sky couches in them, as well as displaying the different flora and fauna New Zealand has to offer in a 360 view, so people can see what New Zealand has to offer and what is there to experience, which they haven't already seen from the world.
It appears as though Qantas in Australia is sort of a key market for Air New Zealand, and I think it was something like 42% of arrivals are from Australia, and Qantas is obviously adding quite a bit of capacity. What made you sort of not think about Australia and focus on the other two areas?
Yeah, if I may take that question. So we also considered this as a factor due to the fact that, of course, also for the Auckland airport, for example, most of the passengers that come internationally are coming from Australia. But we so far felt like this was working efficiently as it is already. And we know that it is expected that the barriers are going to fall between Australia and New Zealand, and it is going to become one domestic market, and flights in between will be called domestic. And so we want to then leverage the efficiency that it currently has, and then wait up to that fall of the barrier, because also that has tax influences, of course, and the prices will lower for these distances.
So many New Zealand and Australian companies have really struggled trying to penetrate the Chinese market, particularly secondary markets in China, not just in aviation but just generally. And there's a huge amount of marketing cost involved, even if you choose Weibo and other low-cost things, and the cultural elements. Did you consider other markets, not Australian or whatever, but did you consider North America at all?
I may take that question. We did consider the Australian, the North American market, but we did see that at the moment, because ultra long haul flights, also like the one to Abu Dhabi, but also to the ones to North America, are very expensive to operate. And at the moment, the fuel prices are very low, but they're expecting to rise. And we saw that the growth coming from China, especially the tourism driven by the middle class, is a lot higher in China. And therefore we saw, our rationale behind it was that once the fuel prices are rising, the profitability on the flights towards North America will be lower than the profitability on flights to China. That's why we went for the Chinese market.
You haven't really talked much about the domestic market, which is, a significant network and important contributor to revenue. Why is that?
Because the domestic network, Air New Zealand has the biggest network in New Zealand, and by just getting more international passengers into the network, because many want to connect to the South Island, for example, we saw that it creates a positive spillover to the already existing network, so that foreigners come into Auckland, stop over in Auckland, and then utilize the high yield market in the domestic.